Before a song is released, a record is produced, or a chorus is written, the musicians that write them think a lot. They live a lot, and they feel a lot. Before the chorus dives into the stories and experiences that shape these artists, and ultimately, the music we hear. I'm your host, Sofia Loporcaro, and this episode's guest is Kish.
I felt almost like I was a machine in a way. That's kind of where negotiations started. It started with just the tension around the hard edge of business against this ephemeral nature of what it is to make art.
Hey everybody, welcome to the final episode of the podcast before I move. As I've mentioned over the last few episodes, I am moving to Toronto to go back to school and do my master's in interior design. As I also mentioned, this podcast is not going anywhere, but the frequency is going to be changing a little bit. So instead of once a week, we're going to be once a month. And I am also going to be taking the month of August off. Mainly just because, as I'm sure you know, moving is hectic. And I just need to be able to focus all of my energy on settling roots in my new city. So I really hope that you enjoy this episode. And obviously, it's not like I'm leaving you with very little to listen to. There is a massive back catalog of Before the Chorus episodes. So if you're ever missing the podcast, you can always go back and check some of those out. Maybe even find one that you haven't listened to yet. I will say I am so happy that this is the final conversation that I'm releasing in this era, if you will, of the podcast before things change, because I really, really loved this conversation with Kilo. And I think personally it also really connected to where I'm at in my career and in my life. She talked so much about the softness of art and the beautiful free-flowing practice of making music and making art, and the way that it often rubs up against the music industry, against capitalism, against the world that we live in that expects artists to churn things out again and again and again, and often doesn't give very much in return, or at least it doesn't give artists enough to live sustainably. And that tension is an incredibly frustrating thing to deal with, and it forces those of us in this world to really advocate for ourselves. And I think this EP Negotiations that she recently put out is such a testament to that tension and to that practice of speaking up for yourself. So I'm not going to say any more. As I always do, I want to let the conversation speak for itself. So without further ado, this is my interview with Kish. I very much have a soft spot for kind of 80s Tron-esque, very robotic sounding stuff. The last couple records that The Weeknd did where he almost doesn't sound human anymore.
Yeah.
I love shit like that. So this was very up my street. But yeah. I guess where I want to begin is just talking about that sort of imagery, the imagery of robotics and machinery. And I guess my first question is what initially kind of drew you, or what in particular draws you to that imagery?
I think for me, it always just starts with questions and ideas that come from just where I'm at mentally, and how I feel about my work and how I feel about my life. And that's always the starting point. I always have a bit of tension as a human being. I'm always just is this the right way? Is that the right way? What am I doing with my life? I'm very much that kind of anxious person. So sometimes it comes out in a way that, or if I was working a lot, or if I was doing a lot of projects back to back, which I think this was coming off the back of, it was to me, I felt almost I was a machine in a way. And so that's kind of where negotiations started. It started with just the tension around something so loose, or something that has to be so free as making art or making making music that like speaks to people or making things that come from the heart. That's such a delicate place. And then there's this business aspect that is so rough. Like the edge of that is so like just kind of brutal and like um devoid of that creative sense. And so that's always been so interesting to me, like the hard edge of business against like the potential softness or the potential like, you know, this ephemeral nature of like what it is to make art. And so this project is where I actually kind of try to tackle it a little bit visually. And so it it was a number of things, but it was like a bit of burnout, a bit of feeling like just kind of like I was, you know, a machine. Okay, what else? What else? What else? And then also just the difficulties of, you know, finding that balance of like business side and the people that you have to work with to make art, and then holding on to like the ability to be creative and keep that sense while being asked to do more and more and more. And so I think that was really just like where I was like, what the fuck? Like, I don't agree. Like, I don't, this is not necessarily like a system that works. And so that was really just where it started. And visually, I just pulled from things that I thought felt within that world, like The Office and like kind of the brutalist architecture and things like that.
Yeah. Love that. I don't know if did you ever I feel like this movie's gotta be shit, I think it's like 15-ish years old now, which feels really weird to say, but did you ever watch the movie Her?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was something, I think more, I guess, on like the romantic aspect or the romantic side of this record. It kind of made me think of that, like sort of like love is a performance, or dating or sex or just interacting with other people as a sort of like an imitation of connection that isn't quite actual connection.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really interesting like idea because that's something that I think about a lot too. It's like, or even just the idea of, we're gonna get existential here, but even just the like within pop music alone, there's so much like of this performance of like love or this performance of, you know, these tropes and these like kind of archetypes that will always land over and over again and we see again and again in pop music. And everybody has a version of like 5 songs of like I miss you, like I want to see you, are we going out dancing tonight, or like you broke my heart. There's just the typical like tropes that people
Yeah.
want to hear again and again and again. And I think for me that's always been a tough one because to me they feel so archetypal. And it's like I think people that do pop music really really well, they find a way to flip those in ways that are unique and interesting for you, um, or they give you some other perspective on it. And for me, it's like with this record, doing it in that like vocoder voice felt good for me because it just feels like it does, like love does feel like that at times. It's like, you know what, you know what someone wants to hear.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like there's that, but also like at least the love songs on this project, they're kind of, or like the ones that could be perceived as such, they're like they are about performance. They're about like what it means to be like received by, you know, other people, or like, or, you know, how to be loved, or like how to be adored, or having attention. And all of these things are like attention and, you know, attention, social media, all of these things have always been like big parts of like my work and like how we're viewed and how we're received by other people. And so like a lot of these were kind of just like, you know, is this good enough? Is this good enough? Is this good enough? Is this good enough? Is this good? Like, how do you want me? And I think
Yes.
that is like a lot of like what I'm saying on this record, but it's not necessarily always a good feeling. And I think with that robotic voice, it gives it that sense of like, ugh, it feels a little dirty in a way. And that's kind of what we're going for there.
Yeah. It reminds me of what you were saying earlier about like feeling attention. Like the tension between saying something very real and this voice or this voice style that's been altered to almost sound inhuman is so trippy, you know?
Yeah, it's I've always wanted to work with vocoder, and like it's one of those things that has been done so well by so many great people that it's almost like something that you don't really want to touch, or it can be like this taboo, or like almost like it can either be really cheesy or it can be really like, or they're like just the icons. Like there's Daft, there's like Kraftwerk, there's like the people that really, these are the people, or there's like the funk like acts that use vocoder a ton. And so it's like it can lean a lot of different ways. And I think if I was like, I want to find a way to do this in a way that still feels like a Kilo Kish record, and it still feels like me. And it's not like, and I wanted to find a way to utilize it in every song, but in a way that doesn't feel like, okay, like it's just like super gimmicky, and like I wanted it to really like feel a part of that world that I was trying to build.
I feel like you really do. Like, you know, the fact that I said before that vocoder and like Tron and those kind of like aesthetics are very dear to me. To your point, it only kind of pulls me when it feels like it's being used really intentionally rather than, like you said, just as a, oh, this is trendy right now, so let me just whack a vocoder on top of this, you know?
Yeah.
There's something I kind of heard on Reprogram. I kind of want your take on it. This might just be like how I interpreted it, but I'm always fascinated to kind of hear from the artist. On the chorus, I noticed, like, at least for me, like the delivery of the chorus feels like the most almost emotional part of the whole song. Like the verses are very much more like in that sort of robotic style. But I noticed that it's almost like the more you got into this like emotional chorus, the more it almost started to get like drowned and distorted in the vocoder. Like you're trying to say something real, and the more you try and say it, the further away, like, or deeper into this sort of
Yeah.
distortion you get pulled.
Yeah, I think like to like Ray Brady, my producer's like credit, he really, we've been working together for a really long time, and he like really gets on board with the concepts that I like have. Like the way that I go about records is very, I'm sure a little bit different than most, but I'll create like a deck, like a large, like, I actually heard that Charlie XCX kind of does this too. But like they would create like a deck and like have all my visual references and my concepts and things I want to explore, and the things that I like see, like the I don't know, potential performances, and like the ideas I want to go down, and like maybe some instruments, or like I don't really do much musical reference. So I think like a lot of people do make records. They're like, okay, I'll make a playlist of like vibes that I like, or like this is kind of where I want to go. But I don't do that. I'm just more so like I'll give visual reference, I'll give like emotional reference, maybe even films or things like that, and then I will go from there. And so for him, like he really like once I write the song and once we found like a sonic palette, he really tries to support that idea as best as possible, and like really make it feel that feeling. We have a really great relationship in that we have the same reason for making music, and it's like to carry these ideas forward. And there's no there's no like layer of um okay, like how do we make this like a radio song, or how do we make this like hit this playlist, or how do we make like there's, and that's a big part of like a lot of music now. It's like you're aiming music at specific places.
Yeah.
And I think like the joy of working with someone for such a long time is that you have that trust that like it's like you don't have like just be creative. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to think in terms of like where this is gonna go. Like if we love it and we think it's cool and different and interesting to us, then let's just go in that direction. And like if it streams, it streams. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like that's kind of where we go. And so yeah, I'd say he always like I'll write the song, I'll record my version, and then I kind of leave him alone with the music for a while after we've like gone over the basic production. Um, and then he'll kind of just keep tweaking little things. And then only if I'm like wait, what did you add? I don't like that. Like, he'll take it back. But a lot of that like texture comes from him like sitting with the ideas and sitting with things, and like just a lot of conversation. So it's really nice to have that.
Yeah, I love that approach. I mean, I my not my background in that I did it, but like growing up, I was like a big musical theater girly. I still kind of am, but one thing that I really learned to love through musical theater was music that feels very intentional and very conceptual. It's like you're trying to communicate a specific feeling or a specific narrative or a specific character's vibe down to a T. And so like everything you do has to be super intentional. And I just find that records that sort of follow that same ethos are way more immersive and way more engaging. So again, I love that you and your producer kind of have that approach.
Yeah, the thing is, I know nothing about musical theater, and I just moved back to New York. So I'm like, I need to go to like now that I'm like in a city that has tons of like that. I was like, I need to go and like actually immerse myself in like some of these different spaces and like learn a little bit more, because it it makes a ton of sense just the way I go about making my work in general. But I'm like, I really want to get into this, and like it would be fun to like make, you know, a play or something one day.
Yeah. I always tell people, like, even if you don't like the sound of musical theater, like, which is, totally fine. Everybody likes what they like. I feel like for people, I always say actually, if you want to write a concept album, study musical theater because it will teach you, like, every sound has to be like, how does this character move? How do they walk through the world? What are they thinking? And everything has to be a reflection of what's happening down to a T. And again, just the way that my brain works, I find that really satisfying. And I find that there's a lot that people can learn from that. Even if, again, they don't like how it sounds, just the intention behind it, I think is really, really useful.
But even like the arcs as well of like the overall like story or the overall narrative of the piece, it's like, okay, like where are we going? I think that's another thing with records. It's like the like what is the order, you
Yeah.
know? And like how do you find that, you know, that build up, or like how do you want it to end on a build up, or do you want it to end like in a dark place, or do you want it to end in a, like it's there's so much with just like ordering an album and like the arrangement of the project. It's like the hard part too.
Yeah, literally. And we're definitely going to talk more about that in a bit because I can definitely sense the sort of arc a little on this record and I do want to touch on that. But before we get there, I want to talk about, I know it's not like technically the title track, but it's like the title adjacent track, if you will. So negotiation versus negotiate.
Yeah.
I, first of all, really love that title. As cheesy as it sounds to say, like, I love the title of this EP. Like, I genuinely do, because coming back to that idea of tension, there's something so, again, like gritty about like reducing relationships, whether they be romantic or business or creative or platonic, down to this sort of like power struggle or transaction. And I'm wondering like if you can kind of talk a little bit more about that track and that sort of feeling on the EP.
Yeah. Like for me, there's always like a literal aspect that coincides with something that's going on in my life, as well as like the more existential, wider, like, okay, well, what isn't a negotiation at this point? Like, it's like, what am I actually selling? And like, and I think when your day-to-day life is like, I'd say my day-to-day life is constant like negotiation, like for most things. It's like, oh, are you gonna go to this event? Okay, are they gonna provide you this? Are you gonna do that? Am I gonna do that? Or are they gonna fly me? Am I gonna do it's like every day is like something like that. Or it's like someone wants to sync your song and like, are you okay with this amount? Are you like they're trying to like pay you less than normal, or they're like everything is it happens so often that it's just become like the way I think if you're not careful, it can be the way you start to look at life. You know, it's like everything is like this exchange of like buying and selling, and what you're selling is yourself at the end of the day. Like you're selling like your ideas, your spirit, you're selling your point of view, you're selling your face, you're selling everything's for sale. So it's kind of like it starts to feel like you need to have some kind of a protection or some type of a like guard for that, because these are all precious things, you know. These are the sensitive soft parts of like the underbelly of who we are, and it's like this is the thing we're deciding to sell. um and so yeah, it kind of speaks to that song in particular, speaks to just like the current like state of making art, making music. And it's kind of just like, how do you make all of these things work together in a way that still makes you happy? At least for me, like I didn't set out to do this for like I didn't really even set out to do music. I kind of set out to like do design, and then music kind of came, and then I followed it. And so it's like, how do I make my life feel like a good life, while it's doing all these things that have now become monetized and have become like this like way to rank myself and like position and box myself, and like the way that people view me has changed, and like people speak to me differently based off of what I achieve and what I don't achieve, and like I'm able to do these things or those things, and that's all as a result of like my output. And so it's like, well, how do I categorize myself then? And like, do I let that enter me, or do I like build my own version of how I see myself? And I think for my entire 20s, I didn't really I didn't protect myself. Like in doing this job, I was like, okay, I'm just learning and I'm just doing what I'm doing. And, you know, and it creates wounds, like doing this kind of work. And so you can get a little like hardened. I guess the song was more so about, yeah, like how do you manage? How do you manage yourself? How do you manage your work, your output, what you want to give? And are you getting what you want in return for it? I think a lot of times artists, we like, there's this like, I can't speak for everyone, but there's like this belief that like, oh, you're doing something you love, like, so it's never gonna hurt you, but it hurts the most. Like it hurts the most. Like, what do you mean? Like if I work, like, I don't know, like if I'm just doing something that I don't care about, then I'm not gonna feel as bad if it doesn't go well. It's like, this is like, this, I give a shit about this.
Yeah, that part. I mean, you're speaking to my soul right now. I'm fine. Actually, it's funny you say like you went from design to music, because I'm actually going in the opposite direction. And part of the reason that I am taking that route is because of everything that you just said. Like, I'm deeply passionate about working in music. I've been interviewing artists for like almost 9 years now, you know, but the music industry and the podcast industry don't hold and support you back. It's almost like, and to make the parallel with, not to say like, you know, to reduce this record to romantic relationships, I think it really, to your point, focuses mainly on creativity in the music industry. But to just use that as an example, I think both in like romantic and interpersonal relationships and business relationships, there's a lot of situations where someone will give you just enough to make you want to lean in and give back, whether that be your art or your time or your body or whatever it is. But they never then continue to give and give to make it feel reciprocal. It's like, you know, a label giving you just enough of an advance to like tempt you.
Just to get by, yeah.
Yeah, and then being like, oh, we're not going to help you any more than this. Or a lover doing the same thing. It's just, it bothers me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, that's it, you know?
Yeah.
It's, and then the question then comes back onto you as to like, what are you worth to yourself?
Yeah.
Like, what is your time worth? What is your energy worth? And I don't say like, it's a tough record and a tough conversation, because it can seem like, oh, you're whining about like, I don't know, like I think it could seem like, oh, well, oh, poor artist girl, you don't have the, you know, you're not where you want to be, or you don't get them, whatever. But you know what I mean? But what I'm saying is like, it's it's more than that. It's not even really even it doesn't even need to be about art. It can, like, to your point, it's like just comes down to like are the things that you're feeding you, like, and if it's not, then why not change? Like, why not, like, try something else? Why not reprogram the way you see your life or the way you see yourself? And, like, why not, like, go down to the wiring and be like, why do I care so much about this? Or am I doing this just because I told myself I would and I don't want to be a quitter? Am I doing this because I want to prove to somebody that said something to me 15 years ago? Am I doing this because I really care? Am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this? And I think our society runs on, like, these routines. Like, our society runs on, like, these kind of unconscious patterns that, like, we're just doing stuff and don't even really know why. Like, I'm just scrolling and I don't know why. It's just in there. So it's like, it's really a record for just prompting reflection. That's really the point. It's really like, okay, this was a record of me reflecting on these things. And, like, from these things, yes, I have made a lot of changes. Like, personally, like, I have a healthy distance from my music at this point. Like, I care. I'm always going to care. And there'll be moments, I think, in times where I'll, like, be so jump more into it, and there'll be moments where I'm like, you know, can see myself as a designer or as a director or the other things that I do, or a curator. And just like you're saying, it's like we all contain these multitudes. It's like you can be an interior designer for, you know, the next 5-6 years of your life, and maybe you'll do something else, and maybe you'll come back to this, and maybe but it's like allowing like change, allowing, like, that, like, reboot of, like, I don't have to be stuck in the cycle that doesn't make me happy. Or, like, I don't have to be stuck in this, like, wheel that just because of my own, like, guilt or fear or, like, oh, I said I would, or obligation. Like, I don't have any obligation to music. I don't have any obligation to give anything. Like, I wanted to do this because I loved it, and I wanted to do this because I wanted to share. But at the moment where you feel like things are becoming, like, you know, tight and like, not hard isn't the right word, but, like, tight and rigid and, like, boxed in, and, like, you have to do these things now. It's like, I don't have to. Like, I'm free. Everyone's free. I don't need to do this. And I can choose to do the things that bring me, like, back to that state of, like, purity that I want to have around my art.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first of all, just yes to all of that. I like the idea too of, on this record, it feels like before the process of quote unquote reprogramming starts to happen, where you really start to center on everything you just said, there's almost like this, like, toxic version of it that's like reclaiming your power, but basically just doing the same thing that other people were doing to you. It's like, oh, you're going to take from me. Well, I'm going to just take from you. I'm going to be the avoidant. I'm going to use you. And, like, I think we in being in these worlds kind of get warped into starting to think the same way, until, like, we kind of clock it within ourselves and we're like, oh shit, now I'm doing this, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about, I think, reflecting. And I think for me, like, within my work, this is probably the most similar project to, like, Reflections in Real Time, which is, like, just kind of was my first record, and it was very, like, in the mind, like, going through all these things. And this was, like, kind of like an update of those, like, concepts from there. But yeah, it's like, I just felt like with American Girl, it was such, like, a fun and, like, still, like, tackling big topics, but a very fun, like, McDonald's-y record for me. And, like, this one was like, I was like, okay, I need to, like, really actually unpack some things again. And so, like, that's what I wanted to do with this project.
Negotiations is available now wherever you normally get your music. This podcast is hosted, edited, and produced by myself, Sofia Loporcaro, and the artwork is by Meg Wilford.